Thank you so much, Mark. It's a wonderful occasion for me to be invited at this International Symposium on Cultural Diplomacy. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to Mark and his staff for organizing this event. And also special thanks go to all the staff of the Macedonian mission to the European Union and my dear friend Andres. And I think that you have heard a lot of good things throughout the whole session yesterday, also the first session of today. I'll be trying to be as brief as possible and try to get some feedback, some exchange of ideas and questions. My first kind of context with one of the European languages is my freshman year of the university, while I was, I think it's 18 years old. So it has started with my application for the French language course, of course the beginner's course, at the Alliance Française. There was, I think it's 1978. And you know why? Why did I choose French instead of either German or the Espanol? Well, there's more girl students who are taking the French language lesson than others, right? So I think that's quite reasonable for me to just choose the French language with so many good looking Korean girl students together. And perhaps this is another kind of confirmation that I think I have made a good choice of coming to this wonderful event, because there are so many good looking female representation here in this room. So let me just go for the topic, and starting with the how we understand cultural diplomacy back in Korea, and also that will be followed up by the perspectives, kind of the assessment of what Korea can do, what Korea should do, and then I'll be moving to what kind of tools or practices the Korean government is undertaking in promoting this cultural diplomacy, and then finally some suggestions. As you see, as Mark has briefly introduced a bit earlier, this Gangnam Style, this size, there's a typical Korean story that has been hitting all the YouTube charts. And this recently there's a Chinese panda that has been brought into Brussels, and when President Xi Jinping was making a state visit to Belgium, so Prime Minister Di Rupo of Belgium has kind of showing some friendship to this Chinese friends. And then President Obama is another icon of the public diplomacy of the United States nowadays. And lastly, there's now the Queen Elizabeth music concours is on the way here in Brussels, and there are 4 Korean singers. This year is this vocal music is the area of competition for Queen Elizabeth music competition. And out of 12 finalists, luckily 4 Korean singers were able to go up. Now next week there'll be the whole competition of finalists throughout next week. So this is kind of the whole aspects of the cultural diplomacy that we are now talking about. Well, cultural diplomacy, as you have been hearing throughout the whole day yesterday, I think this is promotion of national interest through exchange of ideas, traditions, all the cultural activities in order to foster mutual understanding, not to fight against each other. And nowadays, increasingly, we are now witnessing more and more participation of citizens at home and abroad. So foreign expatriate communities at home and also foreign communities abroad. And then, of course, that as Professor Joseph Nye has initiated this idea of the soft power in the 1990s, this soft power approach is now resurging in our policy direction of undertaking this the cultural diplomacy. So, in a nutshell, how to reach the hearts and minds of people, and how to hit the hearts and minds, and finally, how to win the hearts and minds of people. That's kind of the core objective of cultural diplomacy. Well, that's as I briefly explained, the paradigm shift has happened. So in the past, so-called hard power aspects of the diplomacy have been emphasized and undertaken, but not fully fulfilling its objective. So that's why the cultural diplomacy within the context of soft power has been re-emphasized. Of course, the cultural diplomacy has been existent for many centuries. When this Peter Rubens, this great artist and painter, but he's a diplomat from Antwerp, has traveled down to Madrid as an envoy of the people in the northern part of this Europe. But now its cultural diplomacy is gaining more momentum and also more importance and also much more diversified. So as Joseph Nye has remodified his concept of public diplomacy, so he was trying to point out this not only hard power, but not only soft power cannot make the whole things perfect. So hybrid of hard power and soft power, so-called smart power concept has been reintroduced. So as he said, the age-old diplomatic methodologies of hard power and soft power have fused into smart power, which is a cogent and usable diplomacy tool. So within this smart power concept as well, this cultural diplomacy lies at the center. Now this kind of the small chart. In the past, traditional diplomacy is only dealing with government actors and also not fully incorporating this citizenship or non-state actors. But with cultural diplomacy and in a broader sense, public diplomacy are combining all together. Government actor is being connected with the people, NGOs, enterprise, public, not only in the public sector, but also in the business circles, citizens, municipal governments, which is another quite becoming much more key players, regional governments, municipal governments, local communities, and they are linked not only within the country itself, but also interconnected with and amongst themselves. People are being connected to people outside the national boundaries. Because cultural diplomacy is being promoted by citizen diplomacy, and people-to-people diplomacy, and also cross-over inter-exchanges. So foreign governments are now directly communicating with the people inside and outside. So by social network service and all the digital age-based communication tools. So these are the kind of new environments that we are now living in when we are talking about cultural diplomacy. So how Korea is perceiving this cultural diplomacy? Well, as you have noticed, Korea is one of the quite unique examples of modern history. Korea has been known as kind of the war-torn country from 1950 to 1953. We have suffered from the quite a huge devastation of the Korean War. So Korea is still linked with North Korea, because North Korea is our perennial constant problems and also threatening element security-wise. And then Korea has been a very poor country. The per capita income in the 1950s is a little less than that of Kenya at that time. And then now it has been transforming itself from the Korea discount to so-called Korea premium. The economic resurgence, world top 10 trading powers, and also it has transformed itself from a recipient country of foreign aid to a donor country. It's an official OECD DAC members. DAC is Development Assistance Committee of OECD, and also it has been making huge successes in communicating with people outside through so-called K-culture, K-wave, including K-pops, K-dramas, K-films, and K-classical musics. So we are thinking of, when we are trying to make some plans for cultural diplomacy, Korea has been rather in a disadvantaged position when you look at the past from the early part of 20th century up until 1970s, 1980s. But Korea today is much better off in presenting ourselves to the public inside and outside Korea, that the future of Korea is much more brighter, with innovation, with K-wave, with peace-loving people back in Korea. So with that, this is a survey taken by Korea Trade and Investment Promotion Agency last year. It was a survey posed against ordinary European citizens, that what do you come up with? What kind of image do you come up with when you are asked about how do you feel Korea, Japan, and China? So when they were asked, for Korea, Samsung is on the top. North Korea, of course, not separable. K-pop, K-music, Seoul, capital city of Korea, and technology. Those are the concepts or the images that people are just bringing in when they are imagining about something related with Korea. And Japan, sushi, it's delicious sushi, technology, cherry blossom, samurai, animation, of course. And China, of course, it's always evolving, but Great Wall, the kind of the graphical image is Great Wall, communism, Chinese cuisine, mega city, mega market, and population. Those are the kind of the very general images that people, especially in Europe, are coming up with. So as this survey suggests, Korea is except North Korean element. This whole list of 4 items are related with future. Samsung, K-pop, K-music, Seoul, technology, so are related with future-oriented elements rather than past-related things. So what we are focused upon in undertaking our cultural diplomacy is more related with future-oriented elements rather than the past. Of course, we are promoting our traditional music, traditional cultures, traditional art, but more priorities are on the future side rather than the past side, because past side has been rather grim in a sense, especially the early part of the 20th century. Well, there's in the same token, what kind of resources we have. We enjoy rapid economic development and advanced scientific technology, innovation. So that might be presented to our developing countries' colleagues as one of the benchmarking points. This well-connected internet infrastructures and high-speed broadband networks, and 29 million people are now using SNS in Korea. Out of 50 million population, 29 million people are using SNS. It's quite an impressive and extensive usage of SNS services in Korea. And this Korean culture related with Korean wave. So governments are trying to make as much as partnership with citizens. So 50 million population in Korea, and also 7.2 million of Korean people living overseas. We have quite a large so-called diaspora of the Korean people in all of the globe. We are particularly paying keen attention to our partnership with civil society, NGOs, and cyber community. Then let's get down to the practical tools or the kind of the policy elements that we are taking advantage of while undertaking this cultural diplomacy. One wing of our cultural diplomacy is Korean cultural centers. It's a physical presence of cultural hub in the whole of globe. It's kind of window on Korea. It's a interchangeable network base, also a showcase of Korean arts and culture. So we have established 27 Korean cultural centers and 8 in Europe. We have 8 cities, Brussels, Madrid, London, Warsaw, Paris, Budapest, Berlin, Moscow. The Korean Cultural Center in Brussels has been opened just last year, November last year. So it's a small newborn baby, still not fully capable of just standing alone. But I think that's we are trying to make more efforts to introduce ourselves to the people in Brussels. So now we are organizing regular Korean language classes. About 150 are now studying the Korean language classes at the center. And then every Friday night, you are all invited. You have standing invitation to come to the Korean Cultural Center for Korean film viewing. Every Friday night, 8 o'clock. It's a good TGIF, kind of the break from the daily kind of the pressing issues. And we are now organizing a Korean cooking class every 2 weeks. And then cultural workshops and also concerts and exhibitions. So we are having a standing exhibition every day. It is also open on Saturday. So if you are busy enough on weekdays, you are cordially invited to come over to the center on Saturday. And then the government is also organizing the Kpop World Festival together with the Korea Broadcasting System, which is the #1 TV station, and this mostly, as it is said, is 60 regions. They are conducting the preliminary contest, and then the finalists will be all invited to come to Korea and to compete with other foreign K-pop lovers. And in Brussels as well, there's when we were organizing a K-pop festival during the Made in Asia exposition in March this year in Brussels Expo. There's about 2,000 audiences have shown up with about 40 contestants competing with each other for K-pop contest. And we have also a global worldwide K-pop K-food festival, which is featuring traditional cuisines and also inducing global competition of the chefs who are keenly interested in making and cooking Korean cuisines. And then also, as a system, we are also designating goodwill ambassador for cultural diplomacy. So Indonesian actress, and there's a Romanian violinist who has been quite renowned within Romania, has been also named as a goodwill ambassador. So we have currently about 7, and then this year we have another 5 will be designated as goodwill ambassador, those who will be performing as ambassador of culture for Korea. This is a Quiz on Korea, is a very unique kind of TV program, and it's kind of the quiz show. This is basically the contestants are competing with each other in making correct answers for questions related with Korea. So the preliminary rounds has been held in 30 countries, and out of the 30 the country by country competitions, the finalists were chosen and they were invited to Korea, and then it has been on air by the Korea Broadcasting System. So this, as you see, this beautiful 2 ladies from Uzbekistan have won the Grand Prix, and then there are Moroccan and the Israeli and Greek. These contestants are on the backstage. This is I Love Korea contest. It is another unique tool. This is a video contest through YouTube platforms. So the last year we have received 1,400 self-made 3-minute videos. There's I Love Korea Why. So they are presenting their own views, their own experiences, their own stories, and then through the competition, this final YouTube videos are selected, and then those are all disseminated through SNS. It's funded by Korea Foundation. So those are the tools. Mainly is disseminating Korea-related informations and some culture-related items, but with participation of foreign so-called K-lovers, those who are interested in Korean culture. So what kind of lessons and tasks we learn from those actual practices? So in case of Korea, we were keenly aware of the need to establish our own national brand. As Macedonia, I think is quite very efficient and effective in disseminating its information, especially the image of Macedonia to the outside world through CNN, the commercials, or the documentary films. As we do, we are now selling our national image as dynamic and global Korea. So it's kind of the image that we are now trying to build up. But I think there's every country, for every Ministry of Foreign Affairs, every Ministry of even here in the European institutions, I think there's some kind of very positive and future-oriented image should be made, especially in the midst of this quite growing sentiments within the European citizens about and against Brussels. That's how EU can be portrayed to people outside Brussels. That's one kind of the common tasks. And as we see, there's more actors, more tools, and much speedier communication are required. And actors are including, especially nowadays, there's local governments and local NGOs and power bloggers and all the ordinary people who are putting their video clips on YouTube and Facebook and Twitters. And another important element is to embrace foreign communities residing inside its own country. In case of Korea, we have about 2 million foreigners residing in South Korea. So I think they are the messengers. They are the facilitators. They are the direct link to make a bridge between Korea and their home countries. So 2 million is not a small number. It's actually perhaps 3 or 4 out of 100 in Korea are foreigners. And so I think this is another important kind of points that we should keep in mind as we are conducting the cultural diplomacy networks. And the last point, but most important, is to develop joint and co-work programs. Not only just disseminating one-sided, one-way street informations. You have to make things better, but always with the slogan of together. How to embody, for example, in our case of Korean Cultural Center in Brussels, you should be, we should be aware of that need to incorporate the Belgian elements. When we are organizing a concert, try to invite both Korean and Belgian or other European musicians, maybe duo, trio, quartet. So it's not only just present ourselves or sometimes imposing ourselves. That's not the best way of communication. How to embrace. That's the other interlocutors, partners, and diverse cultural elements together. So lastly, the task that we are faced with is that as this conference is titled How to Build Cultural Bridges from the European Union to other partners around the globe. I think this EU and Korea have been doing relatively well in that sense because we have been holding the Cultural Cooperation Committee between the European Union and Korea, which is a bit rare in view of this Korea's standing in the global stage. And also we have last December, we have first organized the EU-Korea Youth Dialogue. It's a dialogue between the younger generation, mostly university students. And then also we are also cooperating with EU centers in Korea. EU centers is being funded by the European Commission and External Action Service, and we have 5 EU centers in Korea. So EU centers are located at one of the 5 leading universities and research institutes. So they are playing as a hub or platform for EU-related data and activities to be funneled into the needy people in Korea. And also we have opened the Korea Innovation Center in Brussels, which is more focused upon technology and scientific research. And it is this Korea Innovation Center is also an outcome of the agreement that has been made by both European Union and Korea when Madam President of Republic of Korea has made a visit to Brussels last November. So innovation is, of course, it's not purely cultural things, but nowadays culture has no boundaries. Yeah. So Innovation Center might play some roles in this enhancing the this more potentials for joint programs and joint actions. And what we are also sharing together when we are working together with the EU counterparts is that promotion of cultural elements in inter-regional cooperation. For example, ASEM, Asia-Europe meeting, which is the largest inter-regional entity which enshrines both Asia and Europe, and educational elements, the scholarship programs, and joint cultural events. Those are the kind of something that we could do more within the framework of ASEM, and also within the Northeast Asia. We could, for example, China, Japan, and Korea, we could have much more frequent and more systematic interactions amongst cultural communities, and also these educational exchanges. So, for example, in case of China, Japan, and Korea trilateral cooperation, we have started a small pilot project which is called Campus Asia program, but it is mainly modeled after Erasmus program of the European Union. It's joint degree programs and exchange of university students that are being promoted within China, Japan, and Korea, as European students have been enjoying quite a good benefit and also enhancing their sense of identity as European citizens through this exchange of students under the Erasmus program. So those are the kind of the lessons and tasks, and I will stop here, and then I will be delighted to ask the questions, be glad to answer you whatever questions you will pose, and also any comments I'll be happy to receive. Thank you.